let's see. Continuing on from last video. Let's see, we'll do it like that. Yeah. Let's see, I got a lot to get through in this video, so I've got a paper here to keep me on track. In the last video, I was trying to come up with a way to talk about the same kind of stuff in a cis kind of style, and the point I was trying to make is that it's kind of like when guys go to the store and buy condoms and are embarrassed. I've never understood that mindset of being embarrassed about buying condoms, because you're saying basically when you do it that I'm about to get laid. So why would you be embarrassed about having sex? About maybe actually that day or whatever, having sex. So yeah, whatever. Let's see, when I was 20, I moved from Kansas to Pueblo, Colorado. Stayed with my cousin and moved from one house to another house. I was working at a Mako Auto Body doing paint and body, and quit that job. My cousin kicked me out, and I moved into a hotel that was pretty cheap, and started working at Color Tile doing carpet. And the guy that lived next to me had a friend that lived in Colorado, in Aguilar, Colorado, and she was an older woman. She was like 40, I think. I was 20, almost 21. My birthday's in January, and I met her in December. So she came up from Aguilar, and we hit it off, and that night we had sex, and then she stayed there for like 2 or 3 days, and I was going to be kicked out of the hotel because I didn't have a job anymore, and I didn't have any money. So she offered to have me move in with her. So I took all my stuff and moved down to Aguilar, Colorado, and I lived with her for almost 4 years, until I was about 24, almost 24. And I've always been, my whole life, like I said, I hated school, and I started playing music on the streets when I was a kid, and I liked busking, and I would play and sing music on the streets, and I lived in a bus. I did some Grateful Dead stuff, and I actually lived in a bus for like 2.5 years with her, and had this really nice '69 Chevy bus, and I was living in that, and I met a guy on the street that used to come by and watch me play all the time, and it turned out he was actually the head of the music department at the Trinidad State Junior College, because I was living in Trinidad in the bus. And he said, "Why don't you go back to college? Why don't you go to college?" And I'd never been to college, so he's like, "Why don't you go to college?" And I was like, "I don't even have a GED. I never even graduated high school." He's like, "Go get your GED then." So I went to the classes, and it was another thing like school where they had me take some tests, and they said, "You're gonna have to study this, and you're gonna have to study this, and you got to do this, and you got to do this." And I did it for like maybe a week, and then I was like, "This is bullshit." So I just stopped, and then I met up with him again like 6 months later, and he was like, "Why didn't you finish that? Why didn't you go to college? You should be in college right now. You're an awesome musician, and you could make something out of your life, and blah, stop living in a bus." And you know how people are, they would think you should live in a house and be like everyone else, should follow along, be a little soldier, So I said, okay, whatever. So I went down to the thing. I said, fuck it, I'm gonna just go take the test, and whatever I don't pass, because if you pass some parts of the test, you don't have to retake those, and you just retake the other part, and you have to do it within like 10 days or something like that if you have to retake anything. And I just went down and took the test and said fuck it, and I actually graduated, and was like the third or fourth highest in the class in score. So I did like really great, passed everything, and math, the whole bit, I passed it all, and I didn't study at all, you know. And I graduated like May. I did a walkthrough actually. I got a GD diploma, and I did a walkthrough, and it was through the college that I was going to go to. So it was through Trinidad State Junior College, and I did a walkthrough in 1998, in like May 24th or something like that. I graduated, and then June 6th I started college. That's how quick I did everything. And that guy that was actually, he's actually the head of the music department, was actually my college advisor. So it was kind of cool. But it was cool and it wasn't cool because he wasn't a very good advisor, because I ended up taking like 24 credit hours or something, and I'd never been to college and didn't know that that was a big deal. And I didn't do very well in college because of that. I did pass English 101 and 121 as well. So, you know, that helped me out when I went back to college. Yeah, so met a bunch of girls in between that time. Really, you know, nothing big. Then in the college, I went through one full semester, and then I started another semester. And because I was taking so many damn credits, I was living in the dorms, and I had the food thing, and I was getting the dorm thing, and I had my bus, and I had a 1964 Buick LeSabre, two-door hardtop, and a pickup truck, an International, like a 1970 something, I forget, 73, 74 International Harvester pickup truck that I've had. And they were all in the parking area, and I had to get special permission to put them in the parking area across from the dorms that I was staying at. And in October, I think it was October, or maybe the beginning of September, or the end of September, I mean, I met a Japanese girl who had moved there actually a couple months before that, and I had never even seen her. So I really liked her. Thought she was awesome. I ended up hooking up with her. By the end of October, she was pregnant. We knew she was pregnant, I mean. Then we went to my parents' house in Kansas for Thanksgiving. So I introduced my parents. And we ended up getting married on February 14th, 2009. And on July 11th, my son was born. And I was living in Denver at the time. I got a CDL truck driver's license, and I started driving for Mayflower Trucking and moving, doing moves and stuff. And I did a bunch of truck driving stuff, and nothing really worked out, you know, in my younger days because of my mental illness and, you know, the problems that I was having. I never have been able to keep a job. And I was on Social Security disability for a while when I was with my Spanish wife, you know, for almost 4 years. So she helped me get on that, and it helped, you know. And then I ended up getting off of it while I was in college, because I was with my new girlfriend, and we moved out of the college into a house, and she was paying everything, and I was going to college, and I had to drop out of college because I didn't have any money anymore. They wouldn't. I basically spent all my allotment because I was going to college and getting the food plan, and then paying for all the courses and the books, and you know, I did too much. I should have been doing like 12 or 14 credits, and I was doing like 25 or 24, I think. So it was ridiculous, and I kept dropping classes. So yeah, it ended up not being a good thing. So I had to drop out actually in December when we got back. When we got back from Thanksgiving, I had to actually move all my stuff out of my place and move it into the bus, and that's when we actually moved out and moved into an apartment, or moved into a house actually. And then we stayed in Fort Collins, or not Fort Collins. We stayed in Trinidad for like another 4 months, 5 months, something like that, till 3 or 4 months, I think 2 or 3 months, something like that, after we got married. And then we ended up moving to Denver, and we were living in Denver for about a year and 4 months, something like that. And then we ended up, nothing was working out work wise, and we ended up moving back to Japan. And that was the first time I had been in Japan. And that was in 2000. My son had turned 1 year old, and we moved to Japan. And yeah, we had him in America, in Denver, and a year after he was born, we were in Japan. So yeah, it was maybe a year and 2 months or something that we stayed in Denver. I did auto body and all kinds of stuff while I was there, and nothing really worked out. That's the way it's always been. I've always been like really ginky. Like in Japanese, that means like excited when I get a job, and then like a couple weeks later, it's not very much fun anymore. And then they realize like I'm not going to work as hard as I was first, and they fire you, you know. So that's basically how it worked. So my wife was really cool in America. She was really awesome. She was like sweatpants, t-shirts, you know, that kind of thing. And, you know, she was really pretty, really nice, kind, everything. And I really loved her. And we came back to Japan, and this is something that you'll hear a lot from Japanese men or Japanese women when Americans are married to them, or foreigners are married to them. They got here and it just flipped. She turned into like full on Japanese, and she was a nurse, and she had been a nurse for like 13 years, and she's still nursing as far as I know right now. I haven't actually met her since I came back to Japan. I've been here almost 4 months, and she started working in Japan. I started teaching English, and she did. At first, I was taking care of the kids. That's something, it kind of keeps me off of thinking about all this. I've got the motherly instinct kind of thing. I love changing diapers and taking care of kids, and I love kids. I think they're awesome. You know, I was actually at the daycare that we had our kids in. There was like 112 kids, and I was known as like the guy that went in there and tickled everybody. So I would go in there literally every morning when I took my son in there, and I would tickle all the kids, every one of them, and they'd want me to chase them around, and the teachers probably hated me, but the kids loved me. They thought that was the awesomest thing in the world. So I'm like a professional tickler now, because I did that for like 3 years. So yeah, and after being here for about 6 months, I started. I didn't like teaching much anymore, and I started exporting cars to Australia and England and New Zealand. And I met some guy. He hooked me up with that, and I started doing that. But in that time, my wife's mom was upset at not being able to teach her how to be like a wife, you know, because in Japan it's typical that if you're married, you're not supposed to work. Husband's supposed to take care of everything. And my wife didn't really cook. She wasn't much of a cleaner. So I was like, perfect, you know, it's a perfect wife for me, you know. So I like to clean the house and take care of the family and do the dishes and cook for my family and do the laundry, and you know, I did everything. You know, my kids actually used to call me Mapa, you know. So, you know, I was a mixture, you know, too. So, you know, kind of shows up right there of like what was going on for real. But yeah, I did everything. But the mother started feeling bad about that, so she started wanting to take my son and feed him and take him to daycare. Like she would come to my house and pick him up. And at first I was spending like all my time with my son, and I was able to like, you know, be a father figure to him. And then slowly but surely, after about 6 to 8 months of that, it was like he was at her house like 3 or 4 times a week, and I hardly ever seen him anymore, you know. And it started to get really bad, you know, and that it's typical for Japan. It's like when you're married to a Japanese woman, typically the Japanese woman will still marry. That's kind of some of the reasons why they like to marry Japanese or Americans or foreigner men, because Japanese men don't really want that. They want you to be at home and take care of the kids. And so she wanted to work. I understood that, and the mother took over that role, and she thought it was her duty to take over the role that her daughter wasn't taught to do and wasn't doing. So I stopped seeing my kids more and more and more and more after about I think we were in Japan for about a year, and then she got pregnant again, and she had where she lost the baby, you know, basically. And she works really hard, and she's a nurse, and she's the sub-head nurse at a hospital here. So she lost it because she was probably working too hard, and that was really hard for her and us, you know. And then she got pregnant again, maybe 4 months later or something like that, and we had my second son, or my third son, because I have an older son than that from a different marriage. So yeah, and once that son was born, same thing. She went back to work almost. I was really surprised. Within like 2 months, she was back at work, and he was like, I still don't get their thing. She wanted to work, and I was working too, but she put him into a daycare when he was just like 2.5, 3 months old. She left him with some old lady that like a daycare. I was like, I worked from my house. I was online. You know, I did all my business through online auctions and online bidding, and you know, there was no reason for my son to be at a what we call in Japan a hui koen. You know, they could have been at home with me. You know, so yeah, I didn't understand it. And after that, my wife started doing things like, you know, saying like I'm, I guess, really fertile, and I just look at my wife's, and they got pregnant. So she would say like, you know, she doesn't want to get pregnant, blah blah blah. She'd do all this kind of stuff, and we started to like never have sex, you know, and towards the end of our relationship, we were having sex like once every 6 months. You know, it was pretty lame, and not much of a life when you're married to someone, you don't get to see your kids, and you don't have sex with them. You know, basically like a roommate, glorified husband. So yeah, and in that time, when we would have sex, which was very rare, I was with her in Japan for about 3.5 years. We got here in July of 2000, and I left in November of 2003. And the reason why is she had 2 abortions and didn't even tell me about it. You know, not my problem, right? You know, it's just my wife and my kids. Yeah, you know, she just she didn't want any more than 2 kids, and she didn't discuss it with me, didn't talk to me. Just go have an abortion. You know, no need for your husband to know that you're having an abortion, right? And I found out because she was going to have another one, and she wanted to discuss it with me because she knew I was upset about the last 2 that she told me about after she had them, and she wanted me to drive her to the abortion clinic so that she could get the abortion. And I was like, yeah, sure, fuck off, you know, yeah. So I took her down, and she got it, and the next day or that night, I stayed up, and I got online, and I found a online website for plane tickets, and I wrote a really long, like, kind of like, you're a fucking bitch, fuck you, kind of, you know, one of those kind of notes, like 4 pages long. And a week after that, I got on a plane. I went back home to America, stayed with my parents. And she tried calling, and I was like, I don't want to talk to the bitch, you know. And I Haven't seen my sons much since I got divorced, but I went back. I'll tell you basically. I'll keep going. But I went back to Japan because she chased after me and stuff. But yeah, she came in February back to America, and she had called me and like said she was sorry, and she read the note and blah blah blah. And she came to America and stayed for like 2 weeks with my sons, and you know, it was kind of nice because I felt bad for my mom and dad, my adopted parents, because they didn't have any other kids. It was just me. My mom couldn't have children, which is why they adopted. And they were actually married for 14 years before they adopted me. So they wanted grandkids, obviously. My mom loves kids. And we took my 1-year-old son and went to Japan and had another son. And she never even met the second son until that time, until she brought him in February, and he was already like 2.5, 3 years old or something by that time, because he was born in 2001 in November. So yeah, he was already like 2.5 years old, So I felt bad for my adopted parents, but yeah, she came and I'll change. I understand it was hard, and blah blah blah. And, I want you to be the father, and all that kind of stuff. So, I ended up driving truck for Warner, and I went to Kentucky, and I guess Kentucky's the hardest state to get a CDL in. So I went to Kentucky and I took the Kentucky CDL driving test through a school there, and from there I went back to Denver, and you had your choice of which schools, and they were all meeting in the same hotel, like which company you wanted to go to. And at first I had went to Swift, and I heard about like the things that happened with Swift trucking. It's not very good. So I decided I'll go with Warner, because Warner actually at the time they were just starting. They'd only been doing it for about a year and got it legal to do bookless. They do it through like a thing called a Qualcomm. It's basically like a computer in the truck, and you actually do all your books on there. So something you can get fined like a huge amount of money if your books aren't up to date when you're driving your truck. And when you go through ports of entries and stops and stuff, if they catch you with your books bad, you can get like $30,000 fines and even lose your license and stuff. So yeah, depending on what you're carrying, what you're hauling. So yeah, it was really, I didn't want to go through all that bullshit. So I went with Warner because they had bookless. It was all through the Qualcomm. So I got pulled over a couple times by cops, and they was like, show me your books. They thought they could catch you. And I'd get on the Qualcomm, and then I'd just show it to them, and they'd be like, fuck, because it'll tell you when you're getting close to your 13-hour drive time to where you have to stop for like 10 hours. So you never have a problem. And if you stop your truck and you forget to turn it off, it'll turn off by itself. And if you start to drive and forget to turn it on, it'll turn it on by itself. So it keeps track of your driving. And all you have to do is get in there later and put in like, I stopped at this time for gas, or to eat or something, or to sleep or whatever. You can do it later. That's really cool. So yeah. So yeah, after I did that, I got a few tickets, and trucking. When you're driving truck and you're doing like 10,000 miles a month and stuff, you're bound to get tickets, because you're on the road a lot more than people are. So I got a bunch of tickets, and I lost my license, and I ended up moving back to Kansas to my parents, and then moving back to Japan with my wife, and I realized after being back about 2 months that nothing had changed. It actually got worse. And I went with some friends of hers, and there was a girl that was in our same hoikoen with my two sons and her two kids, and she was divorced, and she was really awesome. She's the most awesome woman I ever met in my life, and I'm still in love with her now. And she had been previously married to a guy that wasn't the greatest, and abused her dogs, and apparently, from what she had said, abused her kids, and she had panic attacks, and he kind of like put her down for that as well. And me and her started dating, actually, and having sex while I was still married. She helped me do all the divorce stuff and everything. And I told my wife, I basically got mad at my wife, and I was like, because she never let me have friends. If I had any friends or whatever, she'd make it her duty to kind of like, try to fuck it up, so that I wouldn't have any friends. And so I had her as a friend, and I told her she was my friend, but technically she wasn't. And she told me I could go hang out with friends if I wanted to. So I went to a movie with her, and I went and seen like a Jim Carrey movie, the one where he has his brain erased and stuff, And while we were walking around Sonomiya, in Japan, in Kobe, one of her friends that was off of work seen us and told her about it. So that night she found out about it, and she got like psycho. She went like nuts, and she didn't want me to see her anymore. So I was like, and I wasn't having sex with her, with my wife. I mean, we hadn't had sex in like, I think like 4 months at the time, So I was like, I'm not gonna, stop seeing her. You can fuck off, So and I'd already seen a divorce attorney and tried to figure out like what I could do, because I didn't want to lose my kids, which I have now. So I ended up still seeing her. She was coming over to my house at night when my wife was at work, so I was doing kind of shitty stuff, But I just didn't give a fuck anymore. I was really in love with her, and I wasn't in love with my wife anymore. And she was there's nothing about her that I loved at all. And every time I looked at her, I was just pissed, because she fucked everything up. We had a great life, and she just fucked it all up, for no reason, just stupidity, just stupid shit, And so she went off one day and just like I've never hit a woman in my life, and I got real close to like punching her in the face. I mean, and when I got to that point, I was like, I want a divorce, And she was through the whole relationship. I think it's something that they do in Japan. She said she was always like throwing that out there, even when we were in America, before we even had my son. She was like, I want a divorce, that kind of thing, And I kept trying to explain to her that in America, we don't throw that out there. That's not something you use as like a weapon when you talk to your significant other. You don't throw something like that out there unless you mean it, And I never say things like that unless I mean them. And after her going off, I was like, I want a divorce, enough, So she bought me a plane ticket, and I was leaving like 3 days after our court hearing, and I didn't realize a lot of things, and I signed a paper, and they told me like I had to do this, I had to do that, and I really didn't. I found out later that I didn't, but because I signed the paperwork, she got full custody of the kids, and she had told them that I was abusing them, and that I was an abusive father, and stuff like that. So which I never even seen him, I don't know where she got that from. And so she was able to do that. So she turned out to be a vindictive, yada yada. And I ended up being able to only see my kids when I came back from America. I went there for 2 months and then came back and remarried the other girl. And I ended up only being able to see my kids once a month at the end of the month, the last Sunday, and it had to be supervised by her. So yeah, I got remarried and was with her. It was pretty great. We had a few problems like you do in every marriage, but I was pretty happy with her and her kids, and I ended up wanting to try to make a better life for us and get us away from her family and my ex family, because we all lived in the same area. I'm still now like not very far away from her and not very far away from my wife, and I still haven't seen him. So yeah, we ended up I ended up wanting to go to America to try to make a better life and then bring them over. And I went in February of 2009, and that I didn't realize. I thought I was going to go back, get a job, find a place, and make some money, and then send her plane tickets and bring her over. She's never been to America. And it didn't work out that way. We had the financial crisis over there, and when I got over there, there was no work. So I ended up having a lot of trouble, and wasn't able to do that. And in 2010, she divorced me in Japan, because if you're divorced in Japan, you get free medical health care for your kids. So she said that was the reason why. And in 2011, in April, she stopped talking, stopped sending me emails. And then recently I found out that from her, I got on Facebook and found her and stuff, and I was excited. And found out that she actually went back with her ex-husband, and now she's back with him. And apparently she must have done that almost right after she stopped talking to me, or during that time, because on her Facebook page there was a picture of her standing somewhere in 2012, so I think she was already with him at that time. Yeah, so let's see. Okay, and then I'm going to do some videos later on for the there's a bunch of there's some laws that came into effect for transgender people in Japan, and I got on the internet and was researching it and stuff, and there's some regulations called CID in Japan, and the laws basically in Japan, you can't change your gender identity. It's you would think they'd be more progressive because there's no religion here. There's no like Christianity to block a lot of things, but still their laws, their constitution states that you can't be you can't change your identity. Like if you're married to a woman, you can't change your identity to a woman, because then it'll be same-sex couple. And in their constitution, it actually states twice in the constitution that it'll be of a man and a woman, and so they don't allow same-sex couples, and they're actually working on that right now. But the other problem that they have is the CID law states that transgender is a mental disorder, and that's the only way you can get funding. And also, if you want to change your identity in Japan, you can only do it if you do the sex reassignment surgery. That's another thing. So basically, it's like, you have to do this. You can't change your identity in Japan if you haven't changed your genitalia as well. So that's something, if you're thinking of coming to Japan, you might want to think about as well. So yeah, you might want to do that before you come here. That would be cool too. So yeah, I think that's everything. Yeah, I think that's everything for now. I'll talk a little bit more. I'll go into more depth about things, because there's a lot of stuff I'm skipping over, just to kind of get some stuff out there. So yeah, I'll end the video here. If you if you want to see more and stuff, just write in the descriptions, ask me questions, things like that. If you want to know more about me or transgender in Japan, or things like that, just ask, and share, like, and subscribe. Thanks.